What's up, everybody? This is Logan Hanks. I'm honored today to be joined by a good friend and cousin, first cousin, Bobby Lee Hanks. And we're going to kind of dive into the American farmer tonight, or whenever you're listening to this, but night for us. And we're going to kind of run through a lot of things. I think there's a lot of common misconceptions with farmers across the board. I'm going to kind of touch on the row crop side, and Bobby Lee's going to touch on the cattle side. But I'll let him. Well, actually, before we dive in, thank you for joining me, Bobby Lee.
Glad to be here.
Before we get his background, I still like to do my general questions.
Certainly.
So the first one, you got to give up one.
Okay.
Burgers, pizza, or tacos?
I was ready for this question. I'm an avid listener of the podcast.
I appreciate that.
It's pretty easy for me, I think, to say pizza. I give up pizza. It's no way it's burgers. I mean, there's just no way there.
Yeah.
Tacos, yeah, there's just and you could kind of say the same for pizza, but there's just so much versatility with tacos.
It is.
Anything from wild game to your staple of ground beef, steak. So I can pretty easily say, and I love pizza, but I can give it up easier than the other two.
I got you. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. All right. Watch the same film for 24 hours in a row.
This one's a little tougher. My initial reaction, knee-jerk answer is probably Tombstone.
It's a great movie.
Maybe the greatest or most quotable movie, I think.
Yeah.
If we, I guess you could be kind of splitting hairs, but if it didn't have to be totally just a movie, Lonesome Dove.
Yeah, the series. Yeah, that's
yeah,
awesome.
just from the standpoint of you wouldn't have to watch it, but like 4 times.
Yeah, and you'd have it. Yeah, that one, because it is like incredibly long. I mean,
right. I think it's. I watched it actually all the way through not too long ago over the course of a couple of weekends, but it's another very quotable movie.
Well, if I was going to go for series, I would almost say Band of Brothers, because that'd be like 9 hours of footage.
Yeah.
So you could kind of cheat, and have like one whole series.
Yeah, and then that's why, I threw Tombstone out there, because that may be cheating a little bit.
All right. If you could have any job besides what you do now, what would you do?
Well, and so, man, if I could do anything, and if I could assuming I could make money at it.
Yeah, money's not an issue.
It would be cattle, which,
of
course, cattle are kind of my side hustle right now. I have my day job that allows me to play with them.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's, some days, you're out there and you're trying to mess with one and you're cussing them and you wonder why you're doing it. And or days like today, it's checking them this evening. It was
freaking hot as crap.
Oh my God, like it was just miserable.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just something calming and relaxing about it. And if it was my full-time job, maybe it would seem more like a job. But I can honestly say, if I had a way to just totally cattle farm or ranch, that would be a dream job for me.
So you could live the Yellowstone life.
Yeah, that's right. John Dutton right here.
I haven't watched we're like 2 episodes behind.
Well, and I'm at least 1 behind, and I think it was the one, maybe it's 2nd or 3rd one of the season, is actually the most realistic moment of the entire series so far. If you haven't seen it, a slight spoiler alert, but he's sitting there talking to his grandson, and he's talking about how awful of a job or a career ranching is, because you can't control cattle prices, you can't control the price of feed, price of diesel, and cows are constantly trying to get out, or in their case, grizzly bears, they're trying to get in the woods, and the grizzly bears are eating them, and they're getting in the river and drowning. They're trying to get out of the fence and the highway, and wow, this is kind of the first, because of course the show, like anything on TV,
it gets a little hyped.
Yeah, not 100% realistic.
Yeah.
I was like, this is the most realistic thing that's happened on this whole series.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know a lot of the medical stuff, but I know there was that one episode, and I loved Yellowstone.
Oh yeah.
But that one episode where John's got something going on with his stomach, and they put him.
Yeah, you could write, or I've always said I could write a short book on everything that was wrong with that 4 or 5 minute scene where yeah, they do the emergency surgery
Mm-hmm.
in the vet trailer, right beside the cattle chutes,
Yeah.
and save him from his bleeding ulcer that had been misdiagnosed as terminal cancer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it was drama.
Yeah. Hey, it's a good show.
No, I do really enjoy it.
Yeah.
That is one of the few shows that my wife and I take time to actually sit down and
Yeah.
we enjoy it together. So.
Well, and I mean, as you probably know, I'm not a horse guy,
Right.
but I've told Marcy, I'm like, you know what? That show makes me want to get like some wild horses and have some ranch. And I mean, but I don't know how many acres they're on, but you got to have the like 20,000 acre ranch to go along with it. I feel like.
Right. Well, in that part of the country, a lot of times they do because
Yeah.
I mean they call it big sky country out there, but it's their land is they can't graze nearly as densely as we do. It's just they don't get very much rainfall.
Yeah. Well, and the soil quality is not very good either. I don't
It's
think.
not, and it's just I never really realized how much rainfall we get, relatively speaking, here
Yeah.
compared to like a lot of the western states out there, where pretty much everything. I mean, their hay is all irrigated.
Yeah.
It's and so when they're grazing, they have a lot of times one cow calf pair is going to need 20, 30, maybe more acres, and we're a tenth of that.
Yeah.
You can run a pair on 2 acres, but
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, there you go. If you do watch it, from what you've heard us say, you probably don't want your children in the room. It is a little raunchy at times.
yeah, we definitely, which it's hard for us to watch much anything with our kids. They're so wild, but it's usually we get them in bed, then we sit down and catch an episode real quick.
That's why we're 2 behind, because we haven't been able to like catch up yet.
Right.
And Emerson and Levi, they repeat everything. So, all right, Bobby Lee, give us a rundown on your background.
Okay, so as you mentioned earlier, we're first cousins. Our dads are brothers. So born and raised right here in Tipton County. And I guess you may hit on some of this too, but our dads, farmed together. I guess always have. Had both beef cattle, and I guess were big into hay production for a while before they got it more into the row crop side. But my dad, also a veterinarian, he and my mom opened veterinary practice where I currently am partners with them and my brother the year before I was born, and so I've never known anything but veterinary practice.
Yeah, we couldn't drag Drew in here. He's
right. He'll listen though. We'll make sure of that. But yeah, so I grew up right here. Went away. The only time I haven't lived in Tipton County was my 8 years away at school. Came right back, joined my dad in practice, and then me being the older brother, my brother joined us 4 years later, and was blessed with the opportunity to start buying some of my own farmland pretty soon after I moved back, really. Sooner than I really thought I would have been able to. And did a little row cropping on a few acres there, and at the same time kind of slowly started building up a cattle herd, and like I said earlier, that's kind of really where my passion is. And
yeah.
so I work on dogs and cats all day and come home and play with the cows and a few horses, a few chickens, and a couple of kids. And
Yeah.
I do have a wonderful wife. I don't want to forget her.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, she might listen too. You can't get in trouble.
We'll make sure she does.
Well, cool. Well, that's like I say, and it's good diversity. I mean, you're still in the dealing with animals, but that is one thing. Across the board, a lot of farmers like that diversity, and so that is, you talked about having the vet practice does allow you to. It probably gives you a little more freedom on the cattle farm as well.
Oh, it does, and obviously being a veterinarian, even though I don't work on cows day in, day out, I still have that training and knowledge from school, and have access to vaccines and medications that we need very easily. And the main thing is working on dogs and cats pays a little better. So
Yeah, which is different from what you would think. Like from an outside perspective.
Oh, right, cattle. I mean, any food animal is much more important, in the grand scheme of things. But, at the same time, food animal production is a business. And so on the flip side of that is that, most farmers, ranchers that are, whether it's hogs, cattle, whatever, that animal, you know, they can't necessarily spend on it like somebody brings in this cat that wandered up to their house, and
Yeah,
they're more of an, and I won't say more of an
emotional.
emotional attachment, because we definitely have an emotional attachment, but I mean, you're trying to be profitable. And it's a business when you're
Yeah,
farming, and
yeah,
so you have to make business decisions there sometimes. But yeah, as far as overall importance, a dog and a cat, as much as, and emotionally they're important to us, and,
yeah,
and that sort of thing. But and they do become parts of our family. Absolutely. I've spent, even as a veterinarian, I've spent more money than I would care to say on one of my dogs recently, who's had
yeah,
a unique health problem, had to take to a specialist veterinarian. But yeah, people are just, you get that
yeah,
bond with that pet. It's your, and it kind of, a lot of that goes back to, we're very privileged to live in the country where we do, where we have, as a whole, a lot of discretionary income
yeah,
to spend on a animal that is not, serving a purpose other than
yeah,
companionship.
yeah,
And so, but yeah, you're right. Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, you think, well, a food producing animal is much more vital
yeah.
to
And then,
life.
yeah, I mean, in a 800,000 pound cow, you would think would cost. I mean, just be substantially more expensive, but to
Well,
work on.
and the reason, and that's kind of the reason I work more on dogs and cats, is because,
Yeah,
especially in this part of the country, or really this part of the state, it's um, there are equine veterinarians. Actually, that's what my sister-in-law does. But trying to make money just doing food animal work, with cattle, especially given we have no dairies around here anymore.
yeah,
Um, basically the only food animal. There are some sheep and goats, but it's a few of those, and beef cattle, and really, as far as the state of Tennessee goes, we're really far down, in terms of cattle numbers,
on the
because
yeah.
we're in row crop country. But
Well, and two, you hit on it a little bit. You're not dairy. What you do, commercial beef?
right,
All right,
yes.
explain what that is.
So commercial beef just refers to, we're not registered animals. We're not typically producing seed stock. We're crossbred animals, and we do have a few registered cows, but yeah, we're crossbreeding them.
But in the words of Michael Scott from The Office, explain it to me like I were 5.
Okay, so commercial basically is, I have a bull, some cows, they make babies, I grow them up, and they eventually become hamburgers and steaks.
There you go. There you go. And what kind of weight? I mean, like how old are typical when you sell them?
So it depends. Most cow calf operations, which again, that's kind of the very first phase. Obviously, you have a cow, she's raising a calf. So you're going to sell, a lot of those operations sell them at weaning, and so it'll depend. You could say between 400 to 600 pounds, and then kind of the second phase is what people refer to as backgrounding, or the stocker cattle phase.
Yeah.
And they're buying those calves that hopefully have been weaned for a month or two, to cut down on some of their stress. Then they're marketed. You buy them at that phase. They're then generally still kept on pasture, grazed until they're 800, 900, maybe even a little bigger,
Yeah.
pounds, and then they basically are sold again to go to a feedlot.
And they sell them all by the pound.
Yes.
What's the normal price?
Well, it'll depend. So like feeder cattle prices right now today are right around, well, for November is what I keep watching, because that's when we're selling ours.
Yeah.
Right around $1.40 a pound.
Which that isn't bad, is it?
No, it's been up the last, starting like the end of last week. Everything
Yeah.
started ticking up.
I say that doesn't sound that bad.
Live cattle prices, like if you look at like the Board of Trade, you'll see feeder cattle and live cattle. Live cattle is always less, and those are fed cattle, fat cattle,
Yeah.
steers that are ready to go to the processor.
Yeah.
Like they're maybe 1,400 plus pounds even,
Yeah.
and so of course they bring a little less per pound, but they're a lot bigger. So, and some people, like I kind of, I guess, mess around with a couple of different phases. Really, I guess 3 different. But we have a cow-calf herd, and the biggest part of our operation is actually stocker cattle. We buy those calves in the spring, graze them all year, sell them November. Basically, the grass is run out. We get rid of them. They move on to the feed yard, but then we do also feed out a few every year. But
Yeah.
a very small number.
Yeah, and it's good. That's what I had this year.
Yeah, that's,
And hey, and people listening, you might not believe this, but you can taste a difference in store bought beef versus getting it like direct from the farmer, because and he'll go into how they're fed, but it is a noticeable difference. Like Marcy and I both have talked about that. Like you can taste the difference in the ground beef, and it just, I don't know, and it keeps, a lot of times you get the ground beef at like the grocery store, and I mean you got to get it wherever you can. I get somebody listening might be like, well, I can't get it just from direct from the farmer all the time, but you'll notice that at the store you get it turns gray in like no time, and we got from you, man. Once we thaw it out and get it ready and stuff, it's like pretty and red and looks, I mean you can tell it looks good.
and I think there's a variety of reasons for that. One, especially with the ground beef specifically, when you're buying that at the store, it very well may be product from multiple different animals. There's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly safe and reasonable to do.
Yeah.
Where it gets a little annoying and very frustrating to the cattlemen, it's kind of been a point of contention over the last several years, is that we import some beef products, especially what they call lean trim,
Yeah.
out of South America, New Zealand, and even Africa now. And they take those very lean cuts of meat, and because we have fat-fed cattle in this country, we'll blend it with fat to get whatever percentage
And that's
they
good
want.
though. People listening don't think, I mean the fat gives it flavor. Like,
Oh
that's
yeah,
good.
no,
Yeah,
it's
a good thing.
I don't. You don't want your burger to cook down to nothing once you pat it out, but you need the fat. And no, that's the thing. Like we're feeding, and they always say, like, well, we have to import these lean trims because we don't have enough lean cattle in this country. Which I would then argue that, well, our cull cow prices in this country are so terrible that we tend to hang on to cows longer than we should, rather than culling them when they're nearing the end of their productive.
Yeah, you want to get as much money for them as you can.
Right, but that's a whole, another, you could go off on a rant on that for forever.
Yeah.
But, and so the import-export market is really important. So, a lot of that is, they're kind of playing chess, to keep our trade partners happy. And I'm not going to begin to understand all the ins and outs of global beef trade. But the other thing that if you just go buy steaks at the store, and I was not really aware of this until recently, and it makes sense, but like the few steers that I have processed and market direct, they're dry aged, they're killed, they're hung for 2 weeks. That's an important process. It helps with the flavor profile, but especially with the tenderness. And these huge packing facilities that process almost all the beef, you buy at retail, they don't have the storage capacity or really, the time to be able to do that. They're processing, they're running 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 head a day.
So they just got to move it out as soon as they can.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you think about it, if they're processing 5,000 head a day, and say if they were going to age them for 2 weeks, the storage capacity, the refrigeration they would have to have, just to let those just sit there and hang.
Yeah.
And so, and I had never really thought, but I was like, there's no way. Now, obviously, you go to these nice, high-end steakhouses, you'll see, it's 21 day aged.
Yeah.
Ribeye, and of course they're buying from a different source than when you just go to the supermarket.
That's funny. I never realized that.
It's like I say, it was something I just never really thought about. I said, I guess it makes sense. Those steaks have not been aged, which for your ground meat it shouldn't make a big deal, but for your whole cuts, especially your steaks.
Well, them steaks that we got were awesome. Like I said, them ribeyes were some of the best we've had.
Well, so. and I always warn everybody, because everybody wants your steaks. And I'm like, well, and steaks are great, but don't buy the whole or the half of beef for the steaks, simply for the fact of you're gonna be disappointed. There's not a lot of steaks, relative to all your other cuts of meat. But
how would you get more? I mean, is it just you'd have to have, I guess, multiple cows in there to get more?
Right. And like if you're processing your animals like through a USDA inspected facility, which there are very few of them. We only have 2 in West Tennessee.
Yeah.
I could sell individual cuts, like somebody could come to my house, or if I had a storefront and buy 10 pounds of ground beef and a whole slab of ribeyes. But
Yeah.
with the way the USDA regulations go, I really am selling a live animal to someone, and then they're having it custom processed,
Yeah.
and I just handle the feeding and the delivery of it to the processor.
That's what and a lot of people, I've had several reach out because I knew we had cattle, and they're like, man, I want to get one processed, and then they're like, I mean, I don't deal with it. I have like 4 cows, and I have 4 cows because their mother didn't take them, and we just bottle fed them, and so now I've got 4. I got 1 bull and like 3. I think just 1 bull in the mix, and I'm about ready to part ways with all of them. Like I don't claim to be a cattleman, so when people ask me questions, I'm like, man, I'll usually divert them to you, and but I tell them all the time, like, man, you can't hardly get anything processed right now.
Oh, you can't.
Yeah, what is the date?
So I use one in a smaller facility, does custom processing. They are booked. Well, as of about 6 weeks ago, they were booked over a year out. They were booking into like August of next year. So that I would dare say if you called them now, you probably can't get one processed before 2022.
Yeah, that's wild.
I've called a bunch of places. I've called some places that don't process beef that I've tried to talk into it.
Yeah.
But one facility is already booked through the end of 2021, and they hadn't opened their books for 2022 yet.
Yeah.
And that was, again, as of like 6 or 8 weeks ago. Another facility, I actually do have one that I'm delivering next week. They're booked through the end of this year and just haven't opened their books for next year.
Yeah.
And I actually stumbled across a smaller outfit that sound like they're kind of just getting started, but they're pretty well booked through the end of this year too.
Were they? Is this one that has started because they've seen all the influx?
No, from what I understand, and it was actually a guy. A guy had gotten my name and number, and he called me like bugging me, wanting some beef, and I told him, I just don't have any steers, like actual fed steers like you bought.
Yeah.
That are going to be ready. Really it'll be next spring before I do.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, I just like some ground beef, and I said, well, I was like, okay, like I've got some cows, like some older cows that I know once we preg check them won't be bred, and so we'll be culling them. I'm like, if you wanted just one of them.
I see, and that's a good point you make there too. So they check them, so
Yep.
nobody can, because it's I'm not trying to cut you off, but as heated as it gets in today's society, there's so many enemies. I mean, like, I got it from a hunting standpoint, and cattle farmers, you're killing an animal, and
Right.
which most of the people, I mean, a lot of the people that, like when I killed that deer, I got some hilarious hate mail.
I'm sure, yeah.
Getting shot in the anus. I had a person tell me they were going to shoot me in the anus, and all kinds of good stuff. But most of them probably eat meat. Like it's a very slim percent of people that are true vegetarians.
Right.
So most of them probably eat meat.
Right.
And so I want to.
They're fine with somebody else killing their
Yes.
meat.
Yeah. They just but I want you to. So they preg check them, so nobody can be
Right.
like, well, what if it's pregnant?
Oh, nobody would be more heartbroken than me if the cow that I'm delivering next week, was pregnant. But
Yeah.
now we check.
And that's from not just, I mean, obviously from just an emotional standpoint, you don't want to kill a pregnant cow, but on the same point, you're losing money by that because that calf would have then gone into your production.
Right. There's so much, and that's one of the problems with beef production is compared to, especially chickens or even pork. A cow has a gestation period pretty similar to a person's, about 283, 85 days.
Yeah.
So from the time her and that bull get together until the calf hits the ground, and then until you're 18 months, 2 years down the road when you have an animal ready to be processed. So yeah, if I had a cow, say she was 3 or 4 months bred, that's, even if she was one that I had said, I probably want to get rid of her because she's getting a little older.
Yeah.
Well, I'm probably not getting rid of her in that case, which when you check them, and I have a relatively small herd, but you're going to have a few that just did not get bred back for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And so, I told that guy, I was like, well, But I said, you're going to have to find somewhere to get a process. Cause I said, good luck.
Yeah.
And he actually, that's how I came in contact with
He
these
found
people. He
that one.
found one, and
Huh.
yeah, they I believe had been doing deer processing for a while, but I'll be interested. I'm actually delivering her Sunday, but seeing the setup they got. But on their order form, they do everything hangs for 2 weeks, so he has cooler space to do
Yeah.
that. And I actually talked to his wife for a while one day. I called over there just to be sure. 'Cause I don't even know this guy that bought the beef from me, just
Yeah.
to be sure everything was legit. And yeah, I think he works for the sheriff's department and is like a year away from retirement. And they're going to really go into it.
Yeah.
So I told him, yeah, glad.
What's
to
the
have
name? Throw him a shout out
him.
there.
Dave's Deer Processing. It's in Arlington.
Okay, I've heard of that. I think I've heard of that. So they're getting into the beef.
Yeah, apparently they've been doing a little beef and maybe some pork, but
Now they are USDA certified.
they're not. No, they're not. And I'll touch on that a little bit. That they're to be a USDA certified facility. There's only 2 in all of West Tennessee. There's
Yeah.
one in Paris, and this is as far as I understand. I feel pretty certain it's accurate. And then Yoder Brothers in Paris, and then Fayette Packing in Somerville. And all these other facilities, they're custom, what they'll call custom facilities, and they are inspected. They go through either state, they may go through USDA inspections, but there's not a USDA inspector there every day that they're killing animals,
Yeah.
inspecting the carcasses, stamping them, that sort of thing. And that's, again, you go down a whole nother path discussing, is it really necessary that we still do that? And there's actually a piece of legislation that I was reading about just a little while ago that they're trying to get passed to allow you to sell beef within your own state without having to have it USDA inspected. Can't do it interstate, and I think it
Well, that would
makes
be-
a lot of sense.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
One of the statistics they quoted was from all these custom facilities, all the way back to 2012, there has been, and we'll knock on wood, 0 reports of any foodborne illness from any of those.
Yeah.
Whereas these bigger plants, which obviously they're running an enormously, larger volume through, they all the time, and I won't say all the time, but it's not uncommon for them to have a recall.
So that speaks to the strength of the smaller farmer.
Right, the smaller farmer, the smaller business. I mean, these guys that run these facilities, just like me, we're invested in it. One, we just don't want to make anybody sick. 2, you're going to ruin your name immediately if you do. And so, the idea that, it's, the argument against, the need for the traditional USDA inspected is that, it's very antiquated. Let's get forward with the times, that kind of thing.
Well, and like I know in our state, me and you both went through the master beef producer class, and then you've gone through the, I think, advanced master beef producer. So
which is kind of funny.
He had to one up me on it. No.
Right.
But no, the BQA, you got the beef quality assurance certifications.
Yeah, yes.
So like, and I know that that's not like a foolproof thing, but I feel like if a guy if I'm like looking, and this is just from my perspective of this USDA certification or the inspector, if I'm looking, and I'm going to buy beef from a guy, let's say they made it where you can buy it from anybody. I mean, that's the thing you could look for. Does he have his BQA? Is his beef quality certified?
Oh, absolutely.
And I mean, that if a guy, in my opinion, if a dude is like taking the time to keep his certifications up, because mine lapsed, like I know I didn't renew mine, but I don't mess with the cattle.
Right.
And I'm sure yours is probably up to date.
Well, and that was the thing. Like, I didn't realize, I mean, it's like a diploma you get, basically, or a certificate. I was
Yeah.
like, how does this expire? But
Yeah.
that's what I was a little annoyed with the state on that, because it messes up how you can get some cost share on some things. And so 1 year mine was expired, so I didn't qualify, or didn't qualify for the full amount. I was like, so you're telling me either that all this information has changed in the, I don't remember, 4 or 5 year period, or you're just assuming I'm too dumb to have remembered any of it. So which is it, But
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually a fun course. I kind of enjoy going through it.
Well, and I encourage anybody that, like, I've had people reach out to me about wanting to get into cattle, and I tell them to look up on their ag extension and see if they're doing that, because it was a very informative.
Yes, there are an enormous number of resources out there that even a lot of people in the industry don't either know about or utilize.
Yeah.
And so, absolutely, yeah, take advantage of those programs that are out there. Your
Yeah.
tax dollars are funding it anyway.
Well, and
so
not even just from an educational standpoint, but like if a guy thinks that it's too daunting to get started, there's a lot of, like you said, cost share programs. And
right,
before we get the little haters that are like, oh, they're spending our money on that, like farmers get all this money and stuff.
right.
It's for starters, it's like what, 25%.
So for the state on the beef cattle, which that's the only one I've dealt with, it is, if you're a master beef certified, it's 50% cost share, but there's a cap on it and it depends on, I guess, for like if you want to buy cattle equipment, like say a chute,
Yeah.
or a pen, or I bought a creek feeder, things like that. I think the maximum money you can get back is $3,500.
Yeah.
On a 50% cost share. If you're not master certified, you get 35%. So it's, you still get a fair chunk
Yeah.
of money. But,
See, they've done that, opened that up for row crop too.
Yeah. And that's state money too. I will point out that's not your federal tax dollars. That's,
Yeah.
of course, in Tennessee we don't have an income tax, but so that's state money there.
Yeah. Well, that's how this year they opened it up on like row crop solutions.
Right.
And they've had grain bin stuff like storage,
Right.
but I put a GPS on my tractor, and I wanted to try to use the row crop thing, and I filled out for it and applied for it and got accepted, and I bought a GPS monitor and a globe for my tractor, and went to like register it, and I bought them used because it's expensive as hell. It was like, new, it was like $15,000 for these two things for the tractor, and I bought them used for a good bit cheaper than that, and both of them had to be brand new. But I bought them from a dealer, so I was like, well, I bet it's all right. And I called, and they're like, nah, it's got to be new.
And see, cattle equipment was like that, and now you can buy used cattle equipment, but there's, of course, it has to still be in good working order. They're just trying to make sure people aren't
Just
taking advantage of the system and just
getting getting some junk.
buying junk off their buddy, just
Yeah.
that, no money changing hands, just about whatever. And I totally understand that, but there's all kinds of programs. There's now a hay program where you can get hay equipment. There's, I forget what they call it, like an alternative, or
You talking about the different style of
yeah,
farming?
like for people that are raising, I guess non-traditional crops like honeybees.
I think even pumpkins, like
Yep.
you can do.
Pumpkins,
They got
vegetables.
agritourism that'll help
Yes.
you like build like a facility with bathrooms or
Right.
something.
Right.
It's a lot of cool avenues for
Right.
people wanting to get into agriculture.
Yep.
And that's what I wanted to hit on. Like, so from a row crop perspective on this, and you use similar thing I did, the Young Farmers Loan.
Right.
And I've told a lot of guys about it. I'll start off FSA, Farm Services. It's the USDA office. Pretty much everywhere you are is probably going to have a USDA office, and there's Farm Service Agency and NRCS, which is like the national, I don't even remember what they are, but
Natural Resource Conservation Service.
There you go. They're the ones that get on to you when you disc when you shouldn't. No, they do.
And they have some good programs.
I was gonna say they do a lot of good. I'm just messing with them.
I've worked with them on some stuff. Some different programs they have.
Yeah. But the Young Farmers Loan, I've had some people ask me kind of how I got started. And I'm going to run through this, and I'll let Bobby Lee run through his. His dad and my dad farmed together. So they had Circle H Farms. That is their joint partnership farming. And so I came back to work for them, and I wanted to grow my own farm because, as a farmhand, you don't make big bucks. Like it's, farm prices are tight, and we're going to get into that because there's so many things people don't know. So I go to work for my dad and them, and farmhand, and I'm kind of learning the ropes, and I get a chance. Some land comes up for sale that I'm interested in. Well, I'm a 24-year-old guy at the time, I think. I don't have $200,000, $300,000 to go spend, and I'm not gonna go contrary to some people's beliefs to my dad and be like, "Hey, Dad, chunk me $300,000 to go buy this farm. For starters, my dad's not sitting on $300,000. And so I'm looking around, and some people tell me about the Young Farmers Loan. And I go and talk to them at FSA, and you had to have, I think, 3 years background in ag. And I had been involved since, I mean, both of us grew up farming and been in it our whole lives. So, I mean, I had that easy. And you pretty much just have to get them to vouch to say, yeah, he's been involved in ag for 3 years at least. And you sign up pretty much everything of your entire life. You sign up to FSA. Like, they know, like, how many times a day I go to the bathroom and everything else. You're going to sign up everything.
That paperwork is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've never signed so much stuff in my life. Like, I'm just like, you know, they're just flipping pages out, and I'm like, all right, signing. And but what makes it so good is you don't have to put a down payment down, which at the time I didn't have any money to put a down payment down. I mean, I had nothing.
Right. Well, and that would have been my biggest limiting factor on either of the two farms that we bought. Using it. I was only 6 months out of school, and so I hadn't had time to save up really any money when we bought our first piece of property.
Yeah.
The down payment's a killer.
It is. I had reached out to another crediting company, and or whatever they're called, a finance company, and I asked them about buying a farm, and the guy said, yeah, we'll need 30% down. And I was like, I thought to myself, I'm like, if I had 30% of this amount, I probably wouldn't even be worrying about financing this. If I had that much cash, so needless to say,
I probably wouldn't be farming if I had just that much cash.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I would just enjoy myself. So no down payment, and they'll finance it for like 40 years.
Yeah, long terms are pretty incredible, and then
the interest rates. Yeah, I mean, it was like, I mean, at the time, probably, I don't know, 3% or something.
It's significantly less, but the whole thing with that program, it's still a loan. You're still paying it back with interest. It's not like anybody's giving you a handout.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest misconception that, people are, no, you're still.
Oh yeah, you're paying.
The government's
for it.
still making money on you. You know,
Yeah.
it may be at a lower interest rate than you can get through a standard lender, but
Yeah, and
it's
and I mean, it was created because it's incredibly difficult to start. Like if you had to have, I mean, a normal down payment's 15 to 20%. Like if you had to come up with that, I don't know many young guys like us that could have started.
I don't know, anybody unless, that's just, it'd be impossible.
Yeah, I mean, I might could start when I was like 45 years old.
Well, and obviously, and of course, I want less government in my life as possible.
Yeah.
But, they're doing it for a good reason. Yeah, they're trying to protect, the future of the industry. And,
Yeah.
And, I think, and it's probably not a big shocker. The average age of a farmer is, increases
50,
every
58
year.
or something now?
It's not getting any younger. And,
Yeah.
and so, trying to recruit, younger guys and give them a way to get their foot in the door. And so, yeah, but it was when the farm that we bought came available, and it was a farm that a family member of ours owned.
Yeah.
And that I had always known, my wife had even asked me when we were getting married and moved back here, where, eventually, we had a house in town, but, is there somewhere where we could, have a farm? And I was like, this farm, my cousin's own, different cousin, obviously, but I was like, I'd like it.
Yeah.
And I figured, like 10 years from now, maybe we'll approach them about selling it. And they actually came to us, like, we're ready to sell. And I was like, I've been out of school 6 months. Like,
Yeah.
I barely know, making a house payment for the first time in my life. Like, I can't afford a
Yeah.
farm. And, real quickly, you find out about programs like that and made it work. And
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a game changer. And that's what, like, neither of Bobby Lee works with his dad and them over there, but like we grew up with that kind of rural farm raising. We weren't handed anything. Like that's one of the things that gets on my nerves. That's probably one of the most common unknown things. And I mean, with farmers, you see that. I mean, everybody's like, oh, he's the little, that's the farmer's son. And like I said, this guy in particular, he I guess thought he could write a biography on my life, but he so I say all that to say, nobody made my payments or makes my payments but me, and our dads wouldn't. They can't make our payments because they have their own payments to make.
Well, and like you said, farming's not exactly making people rich right now.
No, and so there. All right, and that's where we're gonna go. If anybody has anything they want to know on the Young Farmers thing, feel free to message me. I've told several guys about it. I'm sure you could reach out to Bobby Lee and he'll tell you, because he'll tell you more on how they do it with the cattle side, because they like to figure out kind of your profit net and all that stuff.
And you can find your local county FSA office pretty easily, and people up there are great. They get a reputation as a government agency. They move slow, and they do.
Yeah.
But they're every experience I've had, they're really awesome to work with. So
yeah. Now the only other thing I would say to look at, if you can't go through them or something, I will say Farm Credit has the beginning farmers and ranchers,
right.
And I've got a farm bought through that, and
those are the two lenders.
They are.
I use.
Yeah, I mean and Farm Credit is much easier, but you're not going to get quite as good an interest rate.
Right.
But the paperwork is literally an eighth.
Well, the farm that my wife and I bought just a year and a half or so ago, we actually had to split the loan between those two lenders, FSA and Farm Credit Services, because that young farmer loan through FSA has a cap on how much you can borrow.
Yeah, what is it, 600 now?
It wasn't that much then, because
it was 300,000.
That's what it was then, because I still, from my first farm I had bought, but they could take on part of that second loan.
Yeah.
And I think I made one or two phone calls to my Farm Credit lender, and he sent me a text like, "You're good."
Yep.
With FSA office, I think I did about 85 pages of paperwork that I was trying to do as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And then, and a lot of people probably don't remember, but this would have been, again, about a year and a half ago when the government shut down, like the day before they were getting ready to process mine.
Yeah.
So that set us back like another 6 weeks getting closed. And it was just, that may be why I don't have any hair anymore.
Yeah.
Going through things like that. But yeah, no, they're good to work with, but yeah, that they move at their own pace.
Well, that's the two that I'd look at: FSA and Farm Credit. Farm Credit Mid-America. And our local guy, he's awesome to deal with. And the beginning ranchers thing, they send you. Did you have to go to the training?
I did not. So we must not be through that same program.
The beginning ranchers, I don't remember what. So it'll go like 35 years.
Okay.
And you have 2 years to go to a farm management training.
Okay.
And ours was in Franklin, Tennessee. And it's pretty good. I mean, they teach you a lot of stuff. Like, it was good stuff in it.
I'd be interested in something like that.
Yeah, it was neat.
Yeah.
But we had to go and do that. You get a lot of good hats and koozies, and we got to go.
Nothing a farmer loves more than a free hat.
I know, man. I know. There was a famous meme I've seen of a dude like sweating, and it says when the rep walks in with a handful of hats, and like that. You can sell a guy a bag of expensive seed if you walk in with some free hats.
Oh, people will do some shameful things for a free hat.
Yep. So we got the kind of how we use that loan to get started. Now we're going to dive in, because a lot of people have no idea like how farmers make money.
Right.
So you tell us how you make money in cattle, and I'll hit on the row.
Well, I'll tell you when it happens now. So, and I may focus a little more on my stocker cattle operation right here, because it's a little simpler. It's one of the reasons we got into that side of things. So, also borrowing money. Every year I have a operating loan or a line of credit. We simply buy those calves. We bought them over a span of about 5 or 6 weeks.
Hold on, though. All right. hit on even that. I mean, people have such
Okay,
no idea.
right. So buying the calves. So
The line of credit.
oh, okay.
Explain what that is.
So a line of credit. It's basically just an operating loan, I guess. It, it's sitting there available for you to use when you need it.
Yeah.
And so, which like with buying calves, it's nice because we don't know. It's not like you've got time to go to the bank, say, I'm going to buy these, 40 head of cattle this week. And,
Yeah.
You go to the sale barn, they're there, price is right. You strike while the iron is hot. And
Yeah.
I make one call and they transfer the money and I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
So is your line through FSA still?
Yes.
All right, I
yes.
was gonna say that sounds like a difference because Farm Credit, I'm like,
No. I'm sorry. Mine's through Farm Credit.
Okay, I was gonna say
Yes.
Farm Credit now. I can like strike on a checkbook, and I'm like, here you go.
Well, and they gave me the option of giving me checks, and because we only are buying, we ended up buying calves on like 4 or 5 different days this spring, which a
Yeah.
lot of that was because of the pandemic and cattle weren't being marketed like they normally would be. But I knew I was only going to make a draw. Last year we just drew twice. We
Yeah.
bought 2 weeks in a row, and that was it. So I didn't really another checkbook for me to lose. But,
Yeah.
So yes, I did use that Farm Credit, and a lot of it. Last year we used FSA. This year we used Farm Credit because I won't lie, a lot of it had to do with the paperwork. And it's like, yeah, it's not that big of a difference in interest on this
Yeah.
relatively small amount of money compared to the loan on the property.
Yeah.
And so then we went to the first ones. Yeah, we just went to some local cattle auctions. But yeah, the challenge this spring, we started buying right as the pandemic hit,
Yeah.
and things were getting. Nobody knew what was going on. It was like
Yeah.
early March, and in a way, it helped us because prices were really low. But there was also, again, last year, I called a guy, and we actually used an order buyer last year. Said, hey, I want this many calves, and they sent exactly that many calves, and it took us a little longer to get what we were looking for this year. But if the market keeps coming back, we're going to stand to possibly make a little more money this year because we bought.
How many did you like? Would you say to get to the level of cattle operation you're at now? What is a guy looking at? How many years?
As far as building it up to that point,
Yeah,
with stocker, stocker.
What's your herd size and that kind of thing?
So on our stocker cattle, we're right at 70 head.
Yeah.
Which that's limited by how many grazing acres we have. We don't want to overgraze it, but we want to, have enough out there to be efficient with it.
In this area, would you say 2 acres per head?
Well, depending on, of course, a variety of factors, how aggressively you're managing your pasture. For like a cow-calf pair is the way a lot of people will look at it. So for a cow with a calf on her side nursing, you may see some people go as dense as maybe a pair per acre and a half.
Yeah.
All the way up to maybe twice that, maybe every 3 acres. And that goes back to, and not getting too deep into the ins and outs of beef cattle production, but especially in this part of the country, you're really a grass farmer.
Yeah.
Like that is your crop.
Yeah, I've heard you say that on that.
That you are growing grass. You are simply using that animal to harvest and turn that grass into something that is marketable,
Yeah.
which is pounds of beef.
Yeah.
And so,
Hold on now. What is your YouTube channel handle?
Hurricane Creek Farm.
All right, Hurricane Creek Farm. Bobby Lee goes into a lot of the grass on that channel. You can check it out.
I do. I've neglected the channel a little lately, but haven't totally abandoned it.
Yeah.
Just been busy, had a lot of other stuff going on, but yeah, I do discuss because you better be interested in forages and really focus on that if you want to really succeed at grazing cattle, because that's really what it comes down to. You're growing grass. You're just using them to harvest it and turn it into something useful.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, and check that out. I wasn't trying to butt in on you there.
No,
but,
no problem.
Because he shows, that way you can actually see some of the process. You showed you planting and doing things like that.
Right.
You can get on there and you even talk about some of the varieties.
Right. You can, and I get into it and kind of experiment and play with different annuals versus perennial grasses and forages.
Yeah, marijuana he seems to think is the best.
Hey, as soon as we can legally grow it, that's where the money will be.
The cows are surprisingly happy all the
Now,
time for some reason.
I won't even give them a plug to mention their name, but if you're a particular fast food company who dropped a social media video yesterday. It's lemongrass now that will solve all the world's
Lemongrass.
problem.
On the farting.
Yeah, which again, any cattleman will tell you real quickly, the farts aren't where the methane comes from. It's
Yeah.
the burps. But it's not as fun to talk about burps as it is farts, I guess.
But and realistically, how much is the burps doing?
So animal agriculture is responsible for 2% of greenhouse gas emissions. So, yeah, not very much at all.
And how much does like Leonardo DiCaprio's private jet account
Private
for?
jet and private yacht.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
It's all just they're like that whole commercial they released yesterday in that video, and they're just preying on the ignorance of a lot of the consumers. And
unfortunately, there's a lot of that.
oh, there is.
mean, there's-
And part of me, like, I think it's kind of ridiculous. Like, I'd love to see the Venn diagram of people who enjoy fast food cheeseburgers and who are also incredibly
Concerned for the
aware and
environment.
concerned about, the methane production by beef cattle. Like, I doubt there's a lot of overlap there.
Yeah, I feel like the 2% of the raging liberal environmentalists probably those are probably the vegetarians that don't eat.
Well,
But I mean, those are the ones. I don't know if you ever saw the South Park episode. It was an old one, but it was the people in Hollywood and they sniffed their own farts. I don't know if you.
I have watched some South Park. I was never an avid viewer.
Man, I hadn't watched any in a long time, but I liked how that one episode. That's what I think about when I think about them people. I'm like, do they sniff their own farts?
Oh, there.
Like, I think that these people do.
And it's not the way these companies just, it's fear mongering in a lot of their advertisement and just preying on the ignorance of the consumer.
Yeah.
The one that drives me crazy at the grocery store to the point where I will refuse to buy anything if I can, if it has that non-GMO verified.
Oh man, yeah.
How many products they slap that little label on for which there is not even a genetically
yeah.
modified? Because what is it, like 10 or 11, 12 genetically modified crops that
Yeah,
are grown in the U.S.? I mean, it's so few, but people don't know. And you see extreme examples. The best one I saw, I think it was on Amazon or some online retailer. They were selling non-GMO kitty litter.
Kitty litter. So you don't even eat it, and it's kitty litter.
There's not even any genes
gonna say,
to
what-
be modified.
like in-
It's clay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what do they make that out of? Well, that's
like kitty litter by definition, like a lot of different things, is always non-GMO.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
hey, well that
but they're and of course it was some watchdog group that I think I follow on Twitter that like calls out companies for this stuff,
mhm.
and that was like the most egregious one. And yeah, it was they were charging like 500% more for that product.
I've got a good idea you just gave me. We need to start selling non-GMO bottled water.
Oh,
We could make a killing.
I would be shocked if somebody hasn't already tried it.
Yeah, you could put.
Or they'll at least slap that label on there. And hey, they're not lying. I
It's
mean,
non-GMO.
right.
Yeah, I mean, like my shoes. I could put shoes non-GMO.
Nice.
I mean, that's what. All right, and that is a huge rant of mine. I get freaking because on the row crop we get hit with that all the time because
Right.
I spray Roundup, and it's not a day goes by hardly I don't see a Morgan and Morgan commercial where he's like, "Did you suffer from cancer-related injuries because of glyphosate?" Like, and that crap.
Well,
Ugh.
and the thing, with people wanting to go organic, non-GMO, and all that. Okay, you can believe in that, but do you also believe in, and already a lot of people around the world do go hungry.
Yeah.
But there's no way that we can continue to feed as many people as we do if you can't have it both ways. You can't be in favor of feeding the world or feeding as many people as possible and also want to use these practices that are not nearly as efficient.
Yeah.
And so it's that's
I wish I had the statistic because I had one that it was an illustration and it showed the advances that genetically modified crops have come to with and row crop especially, we feed like, oh man, 1 acre feeds like, I might be off, but I'm thinking it was like 130 people.
Well, and it's, when you really think about genetic modification, like natural selection itself
You
is a
evolve,
form.
yeah,
Yes, I mean you look at all kinds of things how have evolved since the beginning of time.
yeah,
So and obviously they do more advanced plant breeding and things like that now. But yeah, so to act like anytime a gene is modified, like it's an awful thing. I don't know. It's
well, is not it couldn't like vaccines and things of that nature, are they not modified in a laboratory?
well, yeah. I mean, they're all manufactured. It's and Lord, you want to start a deep conversation. You can get into that, and obviously, I mean, I fully believe in vaccines.
Yeah,
and,
yeah. No, I'm not being
no,
anti-vaxxer.
I'm just saying. But man, you can. That is.
How many people are non-GMO that are vaccinated? Like, I bet you it's a large
Oh
percentage
yeah, I
of
see
them.
where you're going. Oh, exactly. And
So I mean, like, so you're okay with getting a directly injected?
and a lot of this, and this is not a new revelation, but a lot of this goes back to just shows how privileged and wealthy we are as a country that
Yeah.
we can be worried about those things. We're not worried about if we're going to get to eat
Yeah, we're not
or
hungry
even
enough.
what we're going to get to eat. It's what version of this are we going
Yeah.
to eat? And
Yeah,
and so I guess that's a price we pay for living in
in
the greatest
America,
country
yeah.
in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I've had that talk with a lot of my farming buddies there about the non-GMO thing, and it's comical too because one, all right, some of these non-GMO crops, corn will pollinate like an extreme long distance. So like if a guy plants non-GMO corn and I mean a mile away his neighbor plants GMO corn, that corn pollinates, and there's a
Right.
strong probability that those two corns will pollinate.
Right.
And I'm not saying this always happens, but I'm saying it can happen.
Right.
So, I mean, that non GMO corn could pollinate with GMO corn, and then
Right.
you're essentially getting GMO corn.
Right. And it's and I understand. Some farmers do grow organic crops, and that's
Hey,
fine.
it's a lot of money in it.
Right. You're getting a premium, but I don't think in many instances that's sustainable or
Yeah.
efficient across the broad spectrum of agriculture in terms of being able to feed as many people as we currently feed or try to feed.
I think a thing said used to 1 acre would feed 12 people, and now 1 acre feeds like 130
Right.
people.
Well, yeah. Which I understand. Again, people around the world are going hungry all the time, but we're feeding more and more people every year still
Yeah,
with what is still fewer and fewer acres.
yeah,
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at anything, dairy cattle, and there's all kinds of examples. How much more sustainable everything is nowadays, and how much less water, is used, and so, yeah, for anybody who acts like farmers, don't care about sustainability or care about the environment, like that's, I mean, it couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, I mean, especially, you're farming that same ground every year. Like you want it to, you're going to take care of it. You're going to
Yeah.
put back into it.
yeah,
Or otherwise, you're not going to be farming very long.
yeah. That's what I'm on. I'm gonna name drop like the king of the podcast world, but that's what. And I like Joe Rogan, but I listen to a lot of his podcasts, and I like him a lot. I enjoy his show, but he loses me sometimes, and he's really against like commercial farming in a lot of
Right.
ways.
Well, and that's, you do hear that people talk about, the factory farms, they're raising animals on the factory farms. And,
Well, see, not
So-
even just the large scale. I mean, he's like not a fan of putting fertilizer down. Like I've heard him say like almost negative things about, growing like 200 bushel corn. He's like the ground wasn't made to produce that.
Well, I mean,
Because
what about using like natural fertilizers like
chicken litter, yeah,
and manures?
which is awesome. That's like if Tyson, they open a plant.
Right, we don't get to have the benefit of that right around here.
No, but man, if they did, chicken litter is freaking phenomenal.
Well, and a lot of dairies,
Yeah.
use their own manure to fertilize their corn ground that they're growing for silage.
Now, where I think you were going on that other were you going to talk? Because I'm not, and I have stepped on toes on this. I'm on a Facebook page called Southern Farming, and it's a pretty big group, and I've stepped on some toes on there because I'm not really a pro large farm guy.
Right, and it's so talk about animal agriculture. Chickens and hogs now, pork have become much more vertically integrated.
Yeah.
They are really big farms. Now, I don't like the word factory farm, and I do eat chicken. Sometimes consuming inferior protein is acceptable. But,
Yeah.
but all kidding aside, and this is where I'm biased, but with cattle, that's just really not even possible because they require so much space. Certainly you have some cattle producers, the John Duttons that have maybe thousands of head, but for the most part, I don't even know what the average herd size in Tennessee, but it's not very big.
Yeah.
And so
Shoot, I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't like 20 or 30 head.
I don't think it's that many actually.
Really?
It wasn't. It's been a while. 15 years ago when I was in college.
Yeah.
I think the average herd was like somewhere between 12 and 15.
Really?
Which you have a lot of big farmers may have. Well, in Tennessee, the big ones are 5, 6, 7, maybe 800 head at the extreme end, and then you have a lot of guys have 3.
Yeah.
They're just they have 6 acres. They put cows out there.
Yeah.
So,
Which
yeah,
is
the
nothing
average,
wrong with that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. But the average size is pretty small. So factory farming, like when it comes to beef production, is just really, that's not true at all. Your feed yards, once you get to that end of the production, which makes up a tiny percentage of the overall, lifespan of that animal. Yeah, they're certainly bigger at that point, but it's still like the term factory farming, I don't think is accurate at all. Certainly with beef production.
Like you said, it gets way blown out of proportion, and that's where, I won't drink yellowtail wine.
Right.
And as much as my wife might enjoy her music, I can't stand Carrie Underwood.
Yeah, she really.
And her dad's a cattle farmer.
I don't know. I don't listen to any modern country music, today's country,
Yeah.
whatever it's going to be.
Pretty much if it ain't metal or something, I'm probably not listening to it. But
yeah, and this is totally off subject. I don't know why. Why does nobody come up with an old country station like on FM?
there really is.
I think there's a huge market for that because like the country music today, and I sound like get off my lawn guy.
I agree.
But yeah, I don't even listen to country music anymore. I listen to classic rock, or I'm podcasting and listening to sports talk.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I am. Yeah, if it ain't, and we just lost a legend, Charlie Daniels.
Oh, man.
And he was the man. He was the man.
Yeah, Tennessean, big University of Tennessee fan. Now that was one. Yeah, these last few months it's been rough. Country, Kenny Rogers, Joe Diffie, and then of course Charlie Daniels.
Yeah, my preacher got to hang out with Charlie Daniels. But shout out to my preacher real quick. Brother Peter Jeffrey, he actually got to play. He played in 90s country. That's when he was.
Okay.
He moved from Washington to Nashville in like the early 90s time frame, and he started playing with Joe D. Messina.
Okay, yeah.
And
big name.
Yeah, what's that one song? They're one of her one of her famous songs. He's in the video because he's playing the piano. He toured with a lot of them, and I asked him one time about Charlie Daniels. I said, "Did you ever meet him?" And he said, "Yeah, I did, man." He said he was as genuine as they get. So it warmed my heart to hear that Charlie Daniels was legit. But that's a totally different.
Also a cattleman.
Was he a cattleman?
Yeah.
Really? I didn't
He
know
had
that.
Herefords.
Okay.
He was. It
Now,
wasn't. It
what's a
wasn't
Hereford? Tell us what a Hereford is.
Hereford, just a breed of beef cattle.
Is that the red and white?
Yep, red body with white face.
Yeah.
Have white underline. But yeah, he had horned Herefords. He was on the cover of the Tennessee Cattleman's
Really?
Tennessee Cattle Business magazine, which is
Okay.
the official publication of the
Cool. I did
Tennessee
not know
Cattle
that.
Association.
I like
yeah.
him even more now.
No,
then.
yeah, they raised Hereford cattle and horses. Oh yeah, no, he was. Yeah, I mean that. Like I said, that one stung.
Yeah. He was. Which he was he in his 80s? He was getting up there.
God, I mean, yeah,
He had a very full life,
No,
but yeah,
and
it
he
still was a tough one.
right. Yeah, as far as I know, which of course respect people's privacy. You don't expect them to make everything public, but I didn't even, I don't know that he was even sick or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't either. I followed Tim Montana, and him and I think he was pretty close with Charlie Daniels, but I didn't see anything from
Right.
him. But no, so let's see, how did we even get on Charlie Daniels?
We were somehow down the road of today's country is awful, and
Yeah, today's country is awful, and
I brought up there needs to be an oldies country
Yeah.
station.
well, and there really should be. Not to get off on that tangent, but like that's the only kind I would listen to because we lost 93X. Now, you're a big sports guy. I'm not a huge sports guy.
Well, I can't listen to any of our local sports talk guys because everything's gotten so political. And,
Yeah,
and none of them, they're all very one-sided with their politics. So,
which sucks that sports has gotten to that level. Like,
well, and they're trending towards ruining it. They
Yeah.
really are because what they don't realize is half the fan. I mean, we're basically a 50-50 country when it comes to our politics, and so you're just gonna alienate half your fan base right there.
Yeah. Well, you're seeing that really hard in NASCAR right now.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I don't care what somebody's thoughts are on the Confederate flag, but NASCAR, that's like banning that and then making all that political.
Right, and I like I say, I don't have a strong opinion on the Confederate flag.
I don't really give a shit about the Confederate flag, to be honest with you.
But I can understand where some people, maybe
they
get
have
offended
strong
by it.
heritage or something. Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, whatever, go for it. But yeah, to try to, I'm not a big fan of banning anything.
Yeah.
Which of course you could go down a big discussion of cancel culture just in general, which is so silly and dumb. And it's funny watching the cancel culture and them slowly consume themselves.
I was going to say they eat themselves more than anything like that.
Oh, that's like the greatest thing ever. Just sit back and watch.
It is. Yeah, I love to watch that. And,
it breaks my heart. And I've heard you say this too. When somebody finally stands up and says something, you're like, okay, yeah, that's totally reasonable. And then they get the cancel culture mob comes after them, and then
they fold like a freaking French
knee,
card table.
Like, oh, have you not learned?
No.
They're not going to like you all of a sudden because you apologized.
No, now you also have no backbone.
Right, yes. Now the people who are on your side, which are generally going to be about half the other side of the country, now they...
all right, I was grew up a Cowboys fan, and when all the kneeling stuff started, I pretty much quit watching NFL. And UFC is like the only thing that I still watch, which Dana White is a raging Republican. And I don't try to make our show like, I like talking politics on the podcast, but I don't want to just, there might be a liberal listening, and I don't have a problem with somebody being a liberal. I don't care if you think differently than me.
I think we don't have to be conservative or liberal.
Yeah.
You can be.
There's issues that I lean left on, like the public land. There's been a lot of Republicans that want to privatize public land. I am staunchly against that. And so, I mean, there's a lot of things I'm not for, but I like Dana White with UFC.
Yeah.
And so I enjoy watching them. And, I don't know if it's the crowd, but they they beat the hell out of each other, and they're just not getting up there talking about social justices and stuff.
Right.
They're not a bunch of social justice warriors because it's usually like a testosterone pumped up dude ready to rock and roll. And so I like watching them
Yeah.
go at it gladiator
Well,
style.
And again, you can turn on sports talk anywhere and hear that debate all day long. But yeah, it's so hypocritical with a lot of them. The NBA being the worst, where they totally bowed to pressure from China. When the Houston Rockets, one of their front office guys, sent out a very benign tweet like in support of Hong Kong,
Yeah.
and like China didn't like that, obviously, and so like all the NBA players like, oh, China's the greatest, and then they're worried about human rights abuses in this country, which nothing's perfect. We're not perfect. We'll never be perfect. We
Yeah.
should strive to be closer to perfect, obviously, but to act like that China is this beacon of freedom.
Oh God, yeah, with their sweatshops and everything else.
And then it's just so hypocritical. Like you can't. Like I like look, if you decide, hey, we're not going to make political statements, that would, upset the Chinese because we're making a business decision. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
But then you can't then come back and then be like, oh no, we're the wokest of the woke.
Yeah.
Sports leagues. As long as we're in our own country and we're talking about things like that rings very hollow in my mind.
Yeah. Well, I talked about it, a lot of it with JP Donnell that I had on, and I liked getting his perspective because he's been in what I would consider the worst place that you could be.
Yep.
He had been, he was a Navy SEAL and was deployed overseas, and he talked about something like, it was so bad over there that the parents would literally try to give their children to them
Right.
and tell them to take it. Take their
Talk
kids.
to anybody, whether they've been military, Peace Corps, anything, where they've not just traveled abroad, but traveled abroad to, non-tourist locations.
Yeah.
Man, we have it so good. And look, I was not raised poor. My parents, I wouldn't say we were rich, but I never had to worry about
Yeah.
having food on the table, anything like that growing up. And the poorest people in this country, the people that we would think, oh wow, they make minimum wage,
Yeah.
and are just so wealthy on a world standard.
Yeah.
The quality of living we have, have a home to go home to every night, and food in the refrigerator, and just the things. And again, obviously there is hunger in this country, but yeah, to act like, and again, nothing's perfect here, but hey, I think it's far more productive to recognize all the opportunities we have here.
Yeah.
And taking advantage of them, taking responsibility for yourself. The only hand you need to count on is the one at the end of your sleeve. There's a reason that first-generation immigrants, no matter where they come from, what they look like, what their accent is, as a general rule, out-earn. Even white men.
Yeah. Us privileged
because
white men.
Right, because they get here and they recognize, oh my gosh, look, there's opportunity everywhere.
Yeah.
If you're willing to go to work, you don't even necessarily have to have unique skills. If you're just willing to, or
Just bust your butt.
intelligence. Yeah, you just get after it.
Yeah.
You can rise up. And there's all kinds of examples of
Yeah.
people that have come here.
Well, and, that's like you said, that's one of the things that irks me today. And, part of the reason why I like guys like Jocko and some of them guys, because they preach extreme ownership.
Right.
And I firmly believe in extreme ownership. Own your own life. And that's what it kills me, this push of people that think that the government should take care of them. And honestly, that's been some of the biggest hindrance to some of these people that just get given everything by the government. They're like, and we're seeing that now. with what's this? People are getting. I heard some people are getting $630 a week on this like unemployment thing that's going on right now, and they were talking about how people don't even want to go back to work.
Well, I believe that because, I mean, and it's not just now, but at our business, our veterinary practice, we're just about always hiring, and like the work we do is not for everybody. If you don't like animals, you're scared of animals, it's not going to work. But I mean, finding people that are really wanting to work is tough. And,
Yeah.
Even in this time when supposedly unemployment shot way up and people were out of work. But yeah, if you're giving everybody incentive not to work, in a way, I kind of can't blame them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the whole idea that I don't know. Of course, we were raised just completely different, but I don't know. I would be so nervous and scared to death if I was counting on something like that, because what's to guarantee that it's going to be there tomorrow?
Yeah.
I mean, there'd obviously be rioting in the streets if there wasn't. But
yeah, and apparently no level. Well, I did see some people in Chaz were getting arrested, which was pretty hilarious. Did you see any of that?
I saw it. Yeah, they finally. It was funny. They finally, the mayor finally ordered them to break it up once the protest got to her front doorstep.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that was convenient timing.
Yeah.
It was the summer of love until they're protesting in your front
Reach
yard.
there, yeah. Well, I always liked it was the leader of Chaz, and he was screaming like a baby there as the cops were putting him in handcuffs and arrested him. And it just warmed my heart to see it, because you can't have anarchy. Like, I've gotten thumbs down on YouTube before, and people don't like some of that, like, kind of abrasive stuff, but it's not abrasive to me. It's just common sense. Like, you can't have anarchy. Like, that's just not going to work. You have to have law and order in a country. I mean, we're straying a long way from farming right now.
We have. Yeah.
but you got to have some level of law and order in a country. I mean, that's just the way.
Well,
You've probably read books, and I really enjoy. You said Tombstone was one of your favorite movies. I love to read about Western Wild West history. I read Dodge City and several others that talk about that. They used to just, like, if a guy cheated at cards, they'd shoot him and kill him. Like, I mean, it was like murder. And I mean, if me and you had a disagreement, we might walk outside and just draw and shoot each other in the street. Like, it was madness.
Well, to be fair, I heard it. I don't listen to much sports talk here, but real quickly, I caught there was two guys that got in an argument over Penny Hardaway, and one of them shot the other one the other night.
what a reason to get shot.
Hey.
Wow.
So it's still the Wild West sometimes.
Wild West, yeah.
But actually, I saw that. It was a quick blurb on Twitter, and I was like most people, I didn't click on it and read the article. It was just, it was just a pretty wild story. Two guys got in an argument over Coach Penny, and
dang, yeah, that.
I guess one of them liked him, one of them didn't, and they settled it the old-fashioned way.
I wonder which side won.
I have no idea. Neither, I would say.
Yeah. If you shoot a guy in the street, do you really win when you go to prison for probably the rest of your life? It just doesn't. So, all right. For anybody that's like still hanging on with us, and they're like, "Man, I came here for the farming stuff."
Right. Get back on track.
I'm gonna explain real quick, kind of the cost of row crop. Bobby Lee's gonna explain the cost of cattle. So, a lot of people probably have no idea the expenses that go in, and the way Bobby Lee said earlier, line of credit. Got a line of credit, and that's same way with row crop. I'm not going to give anybody my exact numbers, but let's just say I got a line of credit for $300,000. And that sounds like a lot of money. That's not a lot of money when it comes to row crop.
That doesn't put in much of a crop.
Yeah. So I might have $300,000 worth of expenses in the year. Hopefully I don't max out my line of credit, because then I'm in trouble. I don't have $300,000 in the bank to go and draw out and do that. If I did, I would use no government programs, and nobody would ever tell me that I couldn't disc a farm or not. I can't do that. So, got a line of credit, and I go and I get money out of that, like say I buy seed. Let's say on corn, for instance, between seed, fertilizer, because you're going to fertilize. Corn really likes fertilizer. You fertilize it a lot, put a lot of nitrogen down per acre, and you're going to spray it. Corn is one of my favorites because you spray it like one time once it comes up, and you're pretty much done. So you might come in with fungicide later on. But corn, on the average side, you might have $360 an acre. That's seed, fertilizer, and chemical. So $360 an acre. A lot of people probably don't have any idea. So, I mean, if you had let's say you had 1,000 acres of corn.
Yeah, $360,000.
Yeah, $360,000 right there.
Yeah.
I mean, you would obviously at that point, and that's when you have to evaluate your line of credit, because you don't get approved for I can't just go and say I need $1 million line of credit. I have to get approved. I have to show that they're taking a chance on me by giving me this money. Well, who's to say? I mean, and they might be worried, like, man, is this guy going to just cash out this $200,000 and head off to the Bahamas and we never see him again? So they got to know that I'm good for the money. So you get that line of credit. I got $350 in there. Well, prices, I wanted to give a quick idea. All right, let's say we'll say $360 an acre on your inputs. And that's, like I said, seed, chemical, all that. And let's say you rent it. You don't even own it. That's probably, let's say you just rented it for $100 an acre. So you got $460 an acre in the crop. Right now, corn is about $3.40 a bushel, which is just piss poor. So let's say it's a average nominal year. You shell 100 and you got normal average ground. I'm not talking river bottom ground. You're just the average farmer. In our area, some places they shell crazy yields and some places they shell terrible. Let's say 150 bushels. That's like that's not bad. I'm not going to be complaining about that. That's $510 an acre at $340. So minus, what did I say? Yeah, $460 with rent and inputs. Yeah. You're making $50 an acre.
Yeah.
And
pretty thin margins.
On 1,000 acres. That's $50,000. Some guys $50,000 isn't bad. Well, last year alone, I had $15,000 worth of repairs on my combine, just my combine. So you could subtract $15,000 because all I did was use the inputs and stuff. That I didn't include repairs. I also didn't include diesel fuel costs. There's another several $1,000s you can subtract. So, I mean, realistically, on 1,000 acres of corn at 150, which 150 is not a terrible yield for around here.
Right.
That's not horrible. But at the prices that they're at, that's not a huge margin. People think farmers are rich. Are there some rich farmers? Sure. But a lot of them have what we like to call old money. And they've been operating off old money. And, if you're in river bottom ground, you make 220 bushel corn, you can make some money. And then people want to be like, oh, yeah, well, what about the payments that farmers get? I can tell you, realistically, most of the payments that farmers got just kept people's heads above water. That was the majority of what it is. I talked to a lot of farmers. And, I mean, some of them were big farmers, working 8,000 plus acres, and they were like, man, if we hadn't got that payment last year, we would have not made it.
Right.
And like I said earlier, I'm a proponent of smaller farmers. Honestly, I don't care to work more than about realistically 2,000 acres. Because for a couple reasons. First, working about 2,000 acres, I can actually watch my crops. It's not so much I can't watch it. If I'm working 20,000 acres, I can't keep up with that much ground. Right. I don't care how good the guy is. If you're working that much ground, There's no way. Like, I could go get in my truck today and I can ride around and I can pretty much see every one of my farms today.
You'd have to have somebody, maybe multiple full-time people, just basically working as secretaries just to keep so you didn't forget about anything.
Yeah, I mean, that me and Dad have talked about that all the time. It's like, man, I don't know how some people keep up with all these farms.
Oh, absolutely.
And because I mean, and here in West Tennessee, you know, a big farm is like 200 acres. It's like a big farm.
Right, a single block of ground.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, if somebody's working like 20,000 acres, they got pardon my French, but they got a shit ton of farms.
Yeah,
like
it's not all in one block.
No.
By a long shot.
No. So, you know, I'm a proponent of the smaller farmers, and, you know, some people don't like to take a chance on the smaller farmer because they're like, well, what if he goes broke? Well, I can tell you on the smaller farmer note, for starters, and I've seen it as I've grown, as you grow, the chance for profit grows and your bills grow exponentially because it costs a lot of money to put a crop in. And so you spend more to grow. And most small guys, like you said, are very vested in it. I mean, you know, if my living comes off of 1,500 acres versus 10,000 acres, I'm going to be really checking that 1,500 acres to make sure that it's all performing like I need it to.
Right.
Versus at 10,000 acres, you know, there might be 500 acres that I kind of like let slide on the back burner because I'm wrapped up in these others. So there's a lot of advantages to small farmers, and that's why I'm a big proponent of small farmers. But I wanted to hit on that. Like right now, corn is $3.40 a bushel. I want to drive this home here. At $3.40 a bushel, beans are like, last I saw, I think they were like $8 and something. They're under $9 now. Beans are like $8.90. Pretty much the same with beans. You know, if you make $50 an acre or something,
yeah,
I mean, it's not a ton of profit margin there. When you look at combines and things, by the time you can afford a combine, for me, it's got some hours on it, and so I'm gonna have to spend some money on repairs. And like I said, last year I spent $15,000 on my combine. Like that wasn't, and that wasn't even catastrophic failures. That was like fairly moderate things.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I would say, like on the government payment thing, because you know, as somebody who's generally very conservative, and I don't want the government. I'd like the government to give no money to anybody for anything. You know, and just, you know, say everybody sink or swim. You know,
yeah.
If it's not profitable to grow certain crops in this country, then we'll just stop growing them.
Yep.
But the issue there, it a lot of it comes back to national security. We don't want to, you know, outsource and rely on
somebody else
imports
for
all our food. Yeah. That would be scary. And so I think there is a role to be played there in terms of making sure that we do continue to have farmers in this country securing our food for us.
And that's a good point, because I saw earlier this year or last year, you know, Trump, obviously, it's like I saw a poll the other day, and it said he had like 92% approval amongst Republicans and 2% approval amongst Democrats. So he's probably one of the most partisan presidents we've ever had. Well, I was on Facebook one day, which is like the cesspool of the world, and it was a news article, and it was talking about farmers supporting Trump. And I went into the comments. I don't know why I went into the comments. Because, you know, the worst ones are always at the top. Like, that's where all the people are commenting, like, you idiot, and, like, all this stuff. So, I mean, that's where all the stuff was at the top. And a guy was in there, and he was like, I hope all these clown farmers go broke. That was, like, the first thing. He was like, they support this guy. I hope all these clown farmers go broke. And I, like, had to pause and just think for a minute. I'm like, this guy is so stupid. Like, he's so mad that farmers across the board are conservative and they support conservative president. so mad by it. He wishes they would go broke. He literally wishes the people that provide the food, like the things for his clothing, like fuel and all these things, he wishes they would go broke.
Well, and that's maybe one of the small silver linings to these last few months. Because again, just talking about wanting to be dependent on foreign sources. We saw unfortunately how dependent we were on foreign manufacturing for a lot of goods, and this pandemic hits, and all of a sudden, there's all these medications that we get out of Asia.
Oh gosh, it was like a huge percent. Was it 80%?
Like almost all our medications.
Yeah.
I don't know of anything. Just was most of the masks. Were made in China. And so there's been a push, to bring some of that manufacturing back, but those things are critical. But man, food isn't. I mean, obviously, we don't want to become dependent, on strictly on imports for our meals.
Yeah.
And so that's where I do think there is some nuance to the discussion of how do you do the payments, and are there some cases of people taking advantage of programs, and nothing's there's no perfect answer to that, but I do think that's the one argument that I look at it from, that I'm like, that does make sense for us to still do that.
I'm with you, and that's, I mean, I'm the same way. Typically, like me and Dad have talked about it, and I've told him, I'm like, there's a lot of times I'm like, I wish they just wouldn't give any payments to even the farmers, because I told him, I said, one thing it would, because I'm
quit taking so much tax money from me, and then quit giving it back to me through whatever,
to make me feel good later. Well, then one thing I did tell him, and I don't say this to ruffle any feathers, but told him, I said it would change the game of agriculture if they gave no payments, and like it would hurt the big guys the worst.
Right.
And I told him, because there's some people that pay astronomical rent.
Right.
And there's some people that will pay astronomical rent just to keep other people from getting to work it. I mean, farming is, I learned getting
cutthroat.
It is, man. And growing up, farmers are kind of envisioned as the moral backbone of the country in a lot of ways. And some of the best people that I know are farmers, and some of the worst people that I know are farmers.
Well, you could, obviously the police officers, the 99.9% of them
are good.
You can say that about any industry, that any profession, and so
I mean, but that's what I said. It would have a revamping if there was no safety net on there. I mean, and it would hurt. Like, even me, like a small farmer, like, I don't have the expenses of some of the big guys. It would be a painful year, which this year I haven't heard of like a payment for row crop. And when I go into the year with the anticipation of not getting a payment. And that's how I set up my budget for the year, because I don't want to be relying on a government payment.
But like I was just saying, I would be scared to death knowing that I lived on a government
payment. Yeah.
I'd be thankful for it. I guess that was how I lived, but every day I'd be trying to figure out a way to not live that way.
Yes. Yeah. And that's where it's something that's off in the mentality that people are going to just take care of me. I just don't.
Well, it's generational now, with some people that, that's what they've known. They've seen it. And so in some of those cases, I don't even blame them. I blame their parents or their grandparents.
Yeah.
And then in some ways, they're just playing the game.
Yeah.
I mean, you blame the game for being set up to reward that type of mentality.
Yeah.
But
it's just crazy times we're in. Now run us down the some of the expenses. What's the normal thing with cattle operation?
Well, and so the easier one to probably explain, just because there's less inputs, and is the stocker cattle side.
Yeah.
So we bought 70 head this year They averaged 570 pounds. We paid, I think we got like $52,000
Yeah.
invested just purchasing those animals.
Yeah.
Then, because of the age group we're bringing in, we immediately, and you helped me, we actually shot a YouTube video.
Yeah.
We run them through the chute, we vaccinate them, we deworm them. We bought all males. We bought some bulls, some steers, the ones that were still bulls, we castrated. So we spent, I think, I'd have to look back, about $40 a head right there.
Yeah.
Just in that one day,
Mhm.
doing those things to them. And then for the rest of the time that I have them, you know, and I do have land cost in there, but I don't really figure that in. You know, I'm
Yeah.
paying interest obviously on our loan, but spent a little money on fertilizer. So, and I did not aggressively fertilize, but that farm, we got about 70 head. We're grazing about 70 acres. We spent about $1,500 on fertilizer. I need to spend some money on lime. I just can't get them out to spread the lime. But anyway, so you've got a little money there, but per head, that's relatively low.
Yeah.
You know, we're feeding a little feed, but it's minimal. We feed, I think I take them about 50 pounds of feed a day. It's just enough to keep them coming to a feed trough, keep
Yeah.
them calm, easily handled, a little bit of mineral. And so I think last year total, we had about $100 a head in everything. By the time
Yeah.
we added our feed, our mineral, you know, and then the initial cost we had with vaccines, deworming, that sort of thing. And so then when we sell, and of course, you know, we're at the mercy of the market when that time comes. We do some things to hedge and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
have some protection built in there. But last year we made, again, not counting any land, you know, charging myself any rent, anything like that, about $100 a head.
Yeah.
So, and we had a few less last year. I think we sold 64 head. And
So that's only $6,400.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Off 60 head of
and my
cattle.
whole goal when we bought this farm, because my wife nearly left me when I told her that I had signed a contract to buy this land.
Yeah.
Even though we had talked about it, she never said no.
Yeah.
But she never really said yes either, kind of thing. But I said, okay, you know, if we can run this many calves on it, we can make this much per year. We can almost make enough to pay for it, which
Yeah.
last year we did. This year, again, I can't count, you know, like with any crop, we're not going to count our chickens before they hatch.
Oh yeah.
Because we were able to buy them so much cheaper this year, I think we bought them like $160 a head cheaper than we did a year ago.
Yeah.
Now we're not going to, I don't think there's any way we'll sell them as high as we did last year either. Just because, again, still the lingering effects of the pandemic. But I don't think making $200 a head is out of the question. But we're not going to make that extra 160.
Yeah.
You're not going to make $250, $300 a head.
But that's still not a ton of money.
Oh no, it won't pay for the farm.
Yeah.
Like, and again, like, obviously, you know, if it would pay for the farm, then I'm getting the ground for free, and so obviously
Yeah.
I'm getting something very valuable in return. But right, I'm down there every morning right at daylight checking cows and all, just to not even really break even. You know?
Yeah.
But it's because, I mean, I do enjoy it. I think, you know, I have, you know, young kids. I think they're not quite old enough to really help. Now, they go with me very often to check them and do things like that. But
Yeah.
I think, you know, being able to raise them the way we were raised, and whenever they're, you know, teenagers, and saying, all right, we're going to get out here. And
Oh, it makes a difference.
you know, you're going to do some manual labor.
Yeah.
You're going to help fix fence. You're going to help, you know, in the hayfield, which, yeah, now most of that's not done by hand either. But,
Yeah.
you know, and then just having the farm to be able to enjoy the outdoors on too. But, so yeah, so you're not making, if you make $100 to $200 a head on those stocker calves, I mean, if you make anything,
Yeah.
you're doing pretty good. And the biggest thing, like, we bought 72 head this year. Your death loss is what will kill you.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
How many did you have? Did y'all
we
lose
lost
any?
2 this year.
Yeah.
72 head. We lost 2. And that's with stocker operations, and it depends on exactly when you're buying them. You're buying a little higher risk animal. than just your cow calf herd, because you're buying them through a sale barn. You
Yeah.
have no idea in most
Don't
cases
know much about them.
if they've had any vaccines, if they were just weaned that morning before they came to the sale barn.
Yeah.
All things that will drastically increase your mortality rate. But and so what's 2 out of 72? I don't 3%. That's an acceptable death loss. I hate
Yeah.
losing them. Last year we bought 65 and still hadn't. We sold 64. We kept one back to feed. I mean,
Yeah.
we didn't lose a single one. It
Yeah.
was,
So that's perfect.
and I told people, I was like, yeah, we'll never do that good again.
Yeah.
But we're buying them. Some stocker operations buy them a little younger and lighter than we do. That's one reason why we think buying them kind of where we do is a little better. They averaged 570. I think 573 this year.
Yeah.
That bigger, they're a lot more likely to have been weaned. And so the cow-calf side of things, it's a little harder to track because it takes you so long to actually make any money. And
Yeah.
I still have not to that point yet, because we've been slowly growing our herd. So every year I've been buying a few more. And so then, you buy a heifer today and say you get her bred, and so she's going to calve next spring. So you don't make any money on her this year. She just costs you money.
Yeah.
And then that calf she has next spring, say you'll finally sell it next fall, and it's going to be a weaned calf worth, I don't know, maybe $600-700. You're still not making money on her.
Yeah.
I forget. There's a rule of thumb how many years it takes her before she's finally making
any money.
But yeah, on the cow herd, you do have more money because you're keeping them through the winter, and so your feed costs go way up once that grass is no longer
Yeah,
there.
man, it's no telling how much hay. Like that's what I'm used to seeing.
Yeah,
'Cause-
all the hay cost, and you're going to be supplementing them, with other feed, either protein blocks or lick wheels or just feeding them, just sack feed, something else to supplement them through.
So that's probably the most expensive route of going.
Yeah, and that's our whole thing with stockers. Yeah, they're basically eating our grass. We're growing that grass, and that's our crop again. They're harvesting it for us, and our inputs are minimal. We sell them all. Last year we sold them the week before Thanksgiving, and so we fed just a little hay that last week or two we had them.
Yeah.
And of course, some years if you get a really early frost or you have a really dry fall and the grass gets short, you may either have to sell early or start feeding a lot of hay earlier. But our whole kind of mindset with that program is they're growing, all their weight gain is from grass.
Yeah. And that's why you say you're a forage farmer.
Yeah.
First and foremost.
Yeah. That little bit of feed they get is nothing. It's enough to keep them coming to a feed trough.
Yeah.
So that if I need to catch one because he's sick, I can do it. Or when that day comes and we're loading a truck to sell them dudes, we can catch them and get them on the truck.
Yeah. Now, what the heck is it? All right, so what is this like antibiotic-free push that we're seeing now?
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's kind of like, it's just a niche, an organic, type thing.
Yeah.
And you can get a premium, and there's all kinds of different programs where you can command a premium, if you're, offering, the hormone free or the, if you're organic or, antibiotic free. There's all kinds of little different niches to go to certain private labels where you can get a premium.
Yeah. I'd never really understood the point.
So the people that think, we just pump them full of antibiotics, we feed them, they're these roided out, animals that are full of steroids and antibiotics when they go to market. No.
How many antibiotics is on normal? How many times does a cow get antibiotic shot?
You hope 0.
Yeah.
So like my cow herd, and I better knock on wood, I'm trying to think. We had a bull with a foot problem. We had to treat with antibiotic.
Is that the one that had the barbed wire stuck in it? Or whatever that was?
Yeah, he had a little piece of wire on his foot.
Yeah.
That he had stepped on. But I've had really good luck. Now, like with our stocker calves, we've had a little bit of trouble with pink eye. So but we don't just treat the whole herd. We spot treat the animals.
Now,
there's very strict guidelines of withdrawal times.
Yeah.
So like right now, I'm not going to sell anything anytime soon, so it's not a big deal. I don't have to worry about it with the antibiotics we're using. But oh yeah, you better follow those labels.
Yeah.
You can.
Now the bull that you gave it to for his foot.
Right. Well, he's not going to be marketed for meat anytime soon.
Yeah.
Maybe.
If you had given him none, what would have happened to him?
Well, he might have gotten better. We might have had to euthanize him because of, the foot got so bad.
Yeah.
Right. And
that's what I was going to say.
he was a valuable animal. He was a breeding animal.
Yeah.
We're
and he
keeping
was
him
young.
for years and years.
He
yeah.
was a young bull.
And so, we use our antibiotics. We target it where we need it.
Yeah.
And following all, there's a
Yeah, y'all have had to.
there's actually, it's called Food Animal Residue Avoidance Database, where you go to, you make sure you're following everything. The hormones are kind of even a bigger area of, I guess, debate and kind of a hot button issue.
Yeah.
But even the cattle that are treated with hormones, I mean, there's been studies, and it's ridiculous. The level, like, of estrogen that ends up in that beef, I mean, it's nothing.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
if
probably
you drink like certain foods are high in estrogen.
soy milk.
Anything.
I was gonna say, yeah.
You drink an ounce of soy milk, you've just consumed more estrogen than you could in a lifetime of eating beef
Yeah.
that was pumped full of implants.
Yeah.
Like, there's just so much estrogen.
And I'm
in soy.
saying that as a soybean farmer over here.
Yes, soy, cabbage. I don't know.
Cabbage has a lot of
Cabbage
estrogen?
has a lot of estrogen. And even like a male,
Yeah.
a human being, we produce, just naturally some degree of estrogen.
Yeah, you got to have some.
Far more than you get from that. And of course, a female, produces, an enormous amount. So it's like, it's not even
A blip on the map there.
not
yeah.
even close. And there's some charts that show that very well. So it's kind of one of those niches where if it was offered enough at a premium, I would jump on board. But
Yeah. Well, that's
again, it's one of those things. When you give those cattle those implants, they're much more efficient in the way they gain weight. You get them to finish, more efficiently. You're using less resources, less water, less feed, and so it's greener. It's more sustainable.
And it's kind of funny, growing up, I always just assumed the implants were testosterone.
Right.
Because I was like, well, it's, I always viewed it as like anabolic steroid.
Right, and there's different ones, but it's the estrogen that ultimately is what you're going to measure in the meat.
Do they give any sort of testosterone to bulls?
No, I mean, not that and again, I don't do much food animal medicine other than on my own.
Yeah.
But now I'm trying to think, like, typically, like my cow herd, on my cow-calf herd, we vaccinate, we deworm. If we're giving an antibiotic, it's, occasionally if we have a little pink eye, just a bacterial eye infection, more or less.
Yeah, we had to dart some. Drew came out and darted some.
We'll dart
mine.
some sometimes. We prefer to run them through the chute just because but sometimes, especially like right now, it is so hot. The heat stress on them, if you don't have them right nearby. Well, I think I treated a few, it was about a week ago.
Yeah.
I did it early in the morning, and before it got too hot. Still, by the time I got done, I was wringing wet. I was like, man, might have been better to have just darted them. But yeah, we're using antibiotics as judiciously as possible.
Yeah.
And very little, and making sure we're avoiding any residues.
Yeah. Well, man, we're coming up on nearly 2 hours.
Flew by.
It did.
And so one other thing I will point out, because I've heard people say this lately, because you go to the grocery store right now, and hopefully the meat shortage is passed, but still you look at that. Actually, somebody today said, you have cattle, explain to me why this beef costs this much.
Yeah.
Y'all are finally making some money. and cattle prices have rebounded a little just within the last few days to a week or two.
Yeah.
But cattle prices have been really poor. They really tanked when coronavirus hit. Now, the meat packer, and you can really stir up a hornet's nest in the cattle industry, they're making more money right now. I mean, they just are. Beef prices shot up. Their production went down there at first because a bunch of plants went offline as a result of the virus. And of course, that had an incredible negative impact on beef or on cattle prices, not beef. Beef prices shot up because supply was down,
Yeah.
and so yeah, if you go to the meat counter and see that the price of beef has surged, that does not always trickle down.
Doesn't mean
cattle
y'all
farm.
are just rolling in the Benjamins over there.
And you could get it. You could do a whole nother 2-hour podcast, but a lot of that goes back to, and there's all kinds of investigations and calls for looking into the big meat packing companies, because there's relatively few companies that control almost all the meat packing, and has there been collusion and price fixing amongst
Yeah.
them? I don't know. I'm not gonna, but there's been several events aside from just coronavirus over the last year or so that have really highlighted the fact that they're making pretty good margins.
Yeah.
And there's a lot, especially the cattle feeders that are at the end of the cattle production
Yeah.
cycle, that have really struggled recently. But
Yeah. Well, that's what, I don't know, man. That's kind of like with us on selling grain. It's like the elevator a lot of times.
Right.
And one of the things that I see all the time, like for people at the elevator, that's where we haul our grain and sell it.
Yeah, you have relatively few outlets for
Yes.
that grain.
Yeah, I have where we're at. We have about 3 places to haul, maybe.
It's
maybe
very
4.
similar to the cattle industry. And when you get to the feedlot level, just to put a number to it, roughly 85% of the cattle killed in this country go through processing facilities or bought by one of 4 companies.
Really?
4 companies, 85% of the market.
Good Lord.
Meat packing.
Yeah.
It's just been so concentrated. And that was where a lot of the blame falls on the meat shortage we got into, because there's so few plants now, but they're so huge.
Yeah.
When 1 or 2 go offline, all of a sudden your supply chain is totally
What would
wrecked.
a guy have to do to start a meat packing plant?
Whew. Of course, it would depend on the size, but I would be lying if I told you I hadn't thought about, with there being no small processing facilities with any open kill dates anytime soon. Like, obvious things, we just need to open one of our own.
That's what I'm saying, man.
But it's, I already have, the cattle are already my side hustle. So for me to, I have had kind of serious conversations, not even kind of serious, but with people like, hey, we ought to think about this. I'd be willing to, maybe invest, but
Yeah.
I would certainly need somebody that knew
what they were doing
to run it. And so I probably don't need to have another iron in the fire like that right now.
Well, between row cropping and podcasting, I got a little flexibility.
Yeah, well, hey, I can right now, and the worry is what will the demand be 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now. But right now, if you had one open
Yeah.
and ready to go, you could be booked through the end of the year and probably through the end of next year.
I'll tell you what, that's what's funny. Normally, I grow sweet corn every year.
Yeah, you didn't have any this
Didn't
year.
do any this year. And this is probably the one year. I mean, I always sell it, but like this year, I could have planted. I've told Dad, me and him have talked about this, because prices are so poor on commodities, and they've been low historically, and expenses are so high on equipment and everything else. I've told him, like, vegetable farming, there's a lot of money in vegetable farming.
Well, anything where you're going direct to the consumer.
Yes.
That's why I try to do that with a little bit of my beef.
Yeah. And and that's where social media is nice.
Right.
Because I got the LH Farms page, and people were messaging me for corn, and I've had so many people reach out this year and like, man, let me know when the corn gets ready. And I'm like, well, I didn't grow any sweet corn this year. This year would have been the year that if I wanted to like really blow up in that, I could have.
Well, it's the same way with the beef.
Yeah.
I had some of my usual customers that, it's like, I got plenty in the freezer, we'll skip a year, whatever. And it's funny because, we get them processed at like March and April, right when this was hitting. And I had a couple of guys that normally buy from me that didn't have any reserve were calling me, and I was like, okay, I got a couple of extras I can get squeezed in, but prices shot up.
Yeah.
Joking with them, but I've gotten calls from so many people, and I don't really have my name out there a couple of places, but not actively marketing at all.
Yeah.
People that I have no idea who they are calling me,
Yeah.
emailing me. I was like, man, there's not any, and even if I had them, you can't get them processed right now.
Well, that's what if there is anything that people can take from this, I do think now it's I want to say a good time to kind of get in. I mean, look, prices are not great on the row crop side. Prices are terrible. But the one way that I've always looked at that, I started my own operation in 2015, and prices have not been just great pretty much since
Right.
I've been in it. And I've always said, if anything, that gives me a little strength.
Right. Well, you hear a lot of people say that $7 corn ruined everybody.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and you see that there's a lot of guys that they don't.
Everybody had new trucks, new
New truck,
equipment, everything.
And you don't have to budget. I mean, you don't have to pay attention to budgets. But when corn is $3.40 and beans are $8.90.
Oh, you're right. And that's a good way of looking at it. Right.
Yeah.
If you can cut your teeth right now and make it, then
you should be
hopefully
okay.
it won't get worse and things will get better.
If it gets much worse than it is now, then it'll be bad. But that's what I've always said. If you can get in it now, and you can make it now, then you should be pretty set. Because, the thing about it, if you budget and plan for $8.90 beans and then somehow beans were to go to $11, that's just more money in your pocket. I mean, a lot of people, I'm a guy that I've always adhered to a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. And that's what farmers are historically bad. I don't know if cattle farmers may be the same way. In row crop, we book our crops a lot of times. And by that I mean like in April, I could book some beans for November, meaning I would watch the market. And the granary would have a basis. And whatever the market contract was, they'd offer a basis. And let's say right now beans are $8.90. At one time, I could get $9.69 for beans, and I booked some at $9.69, and that's for October, November delivery. I didn't book nearly enough because that was right when the trade deal happened, and all of the farmers, we were like, all right, here we go. It's about to kick off.
We're going to get $12.
Yeah, we're going to get $12, and then the coronavirus hits, and it just plummets.
Yeah.
And so we book, but if you can just hang in there, and you book, but farmers historically book and market on the lowest price. There's it's some crazy percent. It was like 90% of farmers sell on the lowest end because historically farmers will pass up on a profit price
Right.
for the hopes of a much higher profit.
Right.
And that's what some of the farmers that have hung in there the most are the most disciplined marketers.
Right.
And that's what, a good farmer now, you got to know how to grow a crop. You got to know how to raise cattle. Obviously, you got to know how to do that. But with the way prices are now, to be a good farmer, you have to know how to market your crops.
Right.
You have to know how to market your cattle. I mean, prices at one time were good enough to where, honestly, if you could just grow a crop and produce cattle, you pretty much could just do it and you could get by. And things have gotten so tight now that you can't do that anymore.
Right. Well, and it's like us, and hedging and just, it makes it a little easier to go to sleep at night knowing that, because again, just this year, I'm not a huge conspiracy theorist, but with crazy as this year has been, and it's an election year, and we clearly have a media that is very heavily invested in having Trump not reelected.
Yes.
Something else crazy is going to happen between now and November.
Yeah.
And who knows what the markets are going to do.
Yeah.
And so that's why we went ahead.
And they're apparently selling children on Wayfair. Did
Oh,
you watch
gosh.
the Wayfair? Did you look into it?
I don't know that I dove into that a little, but that's after watching and all the revelations with Epstein, and I watched the documentary on Netflix with his, it seems a lot more believable that stuff like that happens. And I know we live in a world where bad things happen, but I don't know, that seems almost too crazy. But there are some crazy coincidences.
Did you see the cabinets that were like $15,000?
Well, right, and rugs, and they did have, which, I don't know how you could Google any random name and find, there's a missing kid somewhere
Yeah.
with that name or something. But then they were trying to tie it to like the GPS coordinates of Epstein Island, like match the price of this. I'm like, I don't know. Like this
Yeah.
is. This,
There's some that
the
definitely.
thing about a good conspiracy theory, if you really dive into it, if it's a good one, you can make yourself believe it.
Yeah. The one that like really lost me, and this is kind of where we'll start kind of wrapping up, is
Yeah,
where,
this could go on all night.
yeah, where they said that all the celebrities were actually on house arrest because they were pedophiles, and that's why
Yeah.
the coronavirus shutdown was continuing, so people would not know celebrities are on house arrest.
Yeah.
And somebody said even that apparently Tom Hanks and his wife have been put to death already because of
They've been replaced by
they've been replaced by clones.
doubles, yeah.
Yeah.
Or actual clones.
Yeah,
That's
clones.
impressive.
That's what the new one now is, clones. So, when I start to like read the Wayfair thing and start to believe it, I then stumble upon where Tom Hanks and his wife have been replaced by clones, and I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I don't believe
A
it.
bridge too far right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody loves a good conspiracy theory.
Yeah. Now, what about aliens though?
I don't know. That's one of the things where, you think about like what national secrets would I love to know? Like if I became president,
Yeah.
that'd be one of the first ones. Like, all right,
I
what's
gotta
going
know.
on at Area 51?
Yeah.
I want to know.
Oh yeah, Area 51 has been like my favorite thing. Like I watched the Bob Lazar documentary. Have you ever watched it?
Now,
Man, you owe it to yourself to watch his documentary.
when we were in Vegas back in February, one of the last times anybody could travel and go to Vegas or anything like that, we had to ride a bus, or we didn't have to, but we took a bus from our hotel over to the convention we were going to.
Yeah.
And as we were kind of going by the airport, he's like, "You see those planes over there?" And there were these planes that had no markings on them, no tail numbers, anything. He said, "Those planes go to Area 51 every day." I don't know this guy. I mean, he was a bus driver. He may have been totally full of it, but he's like, "No, like it's those are government planes that fly there every day because
Yeah.
nobody lives there, but they
So
every
they're
morning
flying
the
people
people live
there.
here in Vegas or somewhere in the valley. They drive in here, jump on a plane, take the
Huh.
short flight to Area 51, because it's there's something there. I
Yeah.
guess they do something with the government, but it's again you can spend hours on each individual
Yeah.
conspiracy.
Area 51 has always been something I've always wanted
That's
to
the one
know.
thing. Like if I was president, like first I'm like, all right, I'm cool just knowing that. Like,
But the thing that I've always said would kill me is knowing and not being able to tell anybody.
yeah.
Like
Well,
I would,
then you wonder, like, would they? And you can get into the deep state and all that. Like, how
Yeah.
much of that is even hid from the president potentially?
Yeah. Well, you owe it to yourself to watch the Bob Lazar documentary.
Okay, where can we find it?
It's on Netflix.
Netflix. Okay.
I had read about Bob Lazar years ago, and I talked a little bit on this one with Brent. He asked me about aliens when we talked about the riots, and I haven't watched a lot of alien stuff because you and I both are Christians, so
Right.
I approach things from a biblical perspective. I'm like,
Right.
the Bible doesn't say anything that would lead me to believe that God created aliens. Like, I can't see a reason, because if there are aliens here, then I would believe God made aliens.
The one thing I think about when you look at those diagrams that show you how small like our galaxy even is,
Yeah.
like in the grand scheme of existence, you think, are we really the only
The only
rock,
beings.
orbiting around a big star that has living
Yeah.
beings on it? I don't know. That seems pretty unlikely. That there's
Yeah.
got to be another one somewhere maybe, and but
Yeah.
it's just another Earth. I don't know. But,
Yeah.
and I don't know that necessarily contradicts the Bible either.
Well, that's what I said, because, there's also, it says in there's things that we just won't know.
Right. Well,
It doesn't name, because that's what I told him that, and he was like, well, it doesn't name dinosaurs, but he was like, we know that dinosaurs were here.
right. Well, yeah.
So, he didn't get to name all of it, but Bob Lazar worked at Area 51 back in like the 80s, and he reverse engineered like this. It sounds like a bunch of baloney, but the dude has been consistent with his story for 20 years, because this documentary just came out. It was like 10 years ago when I heard of Bob Lazar, and they wanted him to reverse engineer. Man, it was like I don't know if it was like an anti-gravity thing, and he went and worked for him. Well, he told somebody about it, like what he was working on, and he started noticing that there was like cars parked, like people started watching him. He got like super paranoid, and he ended up getting fired. And they erased his college credentials and all this, because he graduated from college. He had like I don't know if he was a master's degree. He was a scientist. He graduated from college. He had no credentials as ever going to college, and they erased his record of ever working there. But he was in the directory for working at this place, and that was the one thing.
Say there'd be a picture or something.
They missed his name. His name still shows up in the directory. And man, my whole thing with that is, if Bob was full of crap, why would the government go through so much issue? Like, if he says something, why would they bother going to the extremes of deleting all this stuff, and then they miss his name in the directory? But it's like, if he's just full of crap, why would you even worry with it?
Oh, you're right. Yeah, they're giving him more credibility.
Yes.
By going to all those extreme measures. So I don't know.
It's worth
I'll
watching.
Have to watch it. Is it a single or like a
It's a single.
docuseries?
It's like a movie. Just the
Okay.
I think it's called. It might be just called Bob Lazar or something. But it's well done, and it's on Netflix.
Yeah, I'll have to do that. Have you watched the Epstein one?
No.
It's not that. There's nothing earth-shattering that you don't already know about him if you paid any attention to the
So
news.
it won't. Does it tell me that Hillary Clinton suicided him?
No, but it does touch on at the end, like the extremely suspicious
Yeah.
nature of his suicide. And, I was interested in, did it have any real damning evidence tying anybody else to the pedophile ring, and it was really nothing you didn't already know.
Yeah.
Some Prince Andrew probably has the most compelling evidence
Really?
that he was part of it, and then Bill, because Bill lied about ever going to the island.
Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but there's like flight logs, and there's multiple people that they interviewed that were like, no, I saw him.
Man.
Never saw him do anything inappropriate. Whereas Prince Andrew, he was more like getting inappropriate.
Prince Andrew. Which one is that?
I don't know. One of the royal family.
Okay. I was gonna say, is that
one of the British royal family?
Yeah.
I won't pretend to be able to keep them all straight.
That's how I like pride myself in the fact that we follow some of my friends on Facebook, like to share stuff they do, and I'm like, we fought a war to not have to deal with them.
Right.
So
he would be at least a generation ahead of like Harry and William.
So it'd
Prince
be
William,
yeah. So
be like their uncle
grand-
maybe
yeah.
or something. I don't know.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some British dude that's supposedly royal, but has been disowned because he's a pedophile.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Well, the Epstein is definitely, there's a lot of rabbit holes you go down.
Well, I'm interested to see if Ghislaine or
The Maxwell chick, yeah.
because she's definitely in the documentary, which
Yeah.
is neat. I started watching the documentary with kids. It took me, it's only 4 episodes, but it took me like 2 weeks to get through it.
Yeah.
I started watching it, then she gets arrested. So then I was like, well, I'm definitely finishing it now. But like, if that documentary is all true, like, yeah, she should. I mean,
She
was
should
right
drop
there
a
with-
bombshell.
She should be able to.
Well, she's still
If
alive.
there's one to be dropped, she should be able to do.
Yeah. Man, nothing would warm my heart more than a Clinton bombshell coming out.
And there's no telling how far it would go.
They're just so powerful. Like they're so powerful now that I just don't know that anything can ever touch them.
I don't think it would even just be them. Like, there was so much, like, the way his case got, like, initially dismissed down there in Florida, or it didn't get dismissed. Like, he did some jail time, which it kind of reminded me of Pablo Escobar and his jail time.
Yeah.
Whenever he stayed in the the jail that he built for himself. Wasn't quite that level, but like it was a joke.
Yeah.
Was like on work release and like came and went as he wanted. But anyway, so he did. He got a deal that he should have never gotten.
Yeah.
And so it kind of the implication was that, yeah, there were enough really connected people that he had dirt on or were tied to it with him that he was able to pull some strings.
It could, I mean, it could upend Hollywood. I mean, there's a ton of them, which, what's the guy? He was in The Lost Boys. Did you ever watch that?
No.
Oh, man, that's like one of my favorite movies. Might be Corey Feldman. He was in Stand By Me, any of them like classic 80s. But he now is, I think, supposedly heard he was working on like a documentary because he was like an 80s child star.
He had been molested.
He had been molested, I think maybe by Michael Jackson and like some of that crew. And he like has a mission now to try to like, I think, name a lot of the elites that are doing that crap. And as far as I know, he's not dead. Because that's what I'm like, man, you know, I hope that those guys can get the names out there of these people, but it's crazy the power that they have. I mean, like, to get...
Yeah, well, and if there's an ounce of truth to it, man, I can't think of anything more awful than a pedophile.
Yeah, I know. And that's what that's actually what the liberals are about to start. You know, it's a never-ending process.
I know what you're going to say. They're trying to
normalize it. Yep.
Pedophilia. Yeah, I have actually heard the term pedophobe.
Pedophobe.
Yeah, like a homophobe. You're anti-pedophile. Like.
Well, I can safely.
How insane is that?
Yeah, I can safely say I am a pedophobe. I don't even feel.
I'm right there with you. But
yeah.
But, you know, when I look at how ridiculous that sounds, you go back. You don't have to go back that far ago or that long ago. That some of the things that are normalized nowadays would have been like our granddad died 20 years ago.
Yeah.
If
he had seen a dude walking around in a dress, they'd been like, that guy would have got the crap beat out of him, just to be honest with you.
Well, and a lot of liberals don't want to remember this. When in 2008, when Obama and Hillary were facing off, you know,
yeah,
for their Democratic nomination, and then, of course, Obama was eventually running in the general election, they were anti-gay marriage.
Yeah.
Like, that was a mainstream Democratic point of view. Like, no, like, gay people can't get married. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know? Of course, by the time Obama, you know, by his second term and whatnot, but then how crazy is it that then by the next, I guess, 8 years later, 2 elections later, that the Republican candidate, not only is your Democratic candidate, you know, the liberal, you know, okay with gay marriage, you know, pro-gay marriage, but the Republican candidate is, I don't want to say he's pro, but he's not anti-gay marriage.
Yeah.
That's like how far everything shifted in just 8 years.
Well, and that's what it frustrates me with the Republicans, because they're doing that to try to reach for that voters. And you see that on everything. I mean, that's another tangent I could dive off on, is just the politicians
you
just
talk about that.
They did. So give us a closing statement. What if there was anything you could wrap up with, tell anybody listening, what would you close with?
Well, as far as, you know, cattle farming and that kind of thing, you know, again, like I said, I would love to do it if I could make money at it. And that's the big if. And it's, you know, I'd like to say, you know, reach out to a local producer, try to buy your beef, you know, from a local guy, and do that, or girl, gal. My wife's certainly part of our operation, but right now you better be on a wait list most likely, because the demand just got so crazy for that in these last few months. But, you know, just trying to keep it, you know, and I'm like that with supporting the small business, support the little guy.
Yeah.
I'm pro-capitalism, you know, those big meat packing companies got where they are, you know.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because they took risk, and you know, somebody one day, you know, they were the little guy. But, we have the safest food in the world in this country. And I think the vast majority of people realize that. And farmers are out there, you know, whether it's animal production or or crop production, animal agriculture, we're trying to produce it safely and sustainably
Yeah.
as possible.
Yeah, and like I say, it is. I can tell you from where I live, I see the cattle out my window a lot of mornings. It's nothing like seeing that in the morning, and it's nothing like growing your kids up on the farm. So I definitely think it's something, if you want to get into. I did have a guy one time reach out to me and was like, "Man, I want to get into farming. I want something less stressful than what I'm doing now." I had a guy ask me that.
Right.
I said, "Well, you are barking up the wrong tree."
Right.
But it is a good, I do think that it's a good thing once row crop cattle. You got a side hustle until you can, if it's something you want to make
Right.
full time, you got to
and
grow
do
it
that.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you get it to the point where you can make it a full-time gig, that's awesome.
Yeah, if that's where you want to
And
go.
if it stays, I mean, I fully expect mine will always be a side gig until I'm old enough to retire, and then
Yeah,
but if I still enjoy it, I'll keep doing it. But yeah, nothing wrong with it being something you do on the side.
yeah,
And see where it goes.
yeah. Well, everybody, I hope y'all enjoyed this. Check out Bobby Lee at Hurricane Creek Farms. Is it all one word?
So yeah, on Instagram, yeah, Hurricane Creek Farm or Hurricane Creek Farms. But yeah, you search either of those, you'll
And
find
on
us.
YouTube, just Hurricane Creek Farms.
I think it's Hurricane Creek Farms on YouTube.
Okay, check that out. Cause he puts up videos, and he'll, like I say, he hasn't abandoned it. He'll get us
We'll get some more out for long. We're just trying to, want to have interesting content, obviously.
Yeah. And real quick before everybody would get off of here, some of you may have seen I kind of linked up with Wilder Tactical, and you can go. Actually meant to have the belt because we are videoing we're going to put this up on YouTube as well. I've got the minimalist belt pad. Now I paired mine with a Nex belt. I really like Nex belt. It's a ratcheting style belt, but you can go on Wilder Tactical, use the code LOGAH10. You can get 10% off on your order, and they got mag pouches, AR pouches, belt pads. I mean, all kinds of stuff. They're veteran owned, made in America, high quality. I've used them long before I ever linked up with them, so it wasn't like something that I linked up with just because of the podcast. I truly believe in their product. So check that out. Again, Wilder Tactical, and use the code LOGAH10. So guys, I hope y'all enjoyed this one, and Bobby Lee, thank you for joining me, man. It was awesome.
I enjoyed it.
Cool. Well, everybody, y'all have a good one. Thank you.